Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to keep talking about descriptive statistics in JASP, and I'm going to walk you through uploading the data into JASP and doing some JASP analyses. So let's take a look. First of all, hopefully you've already done the reading in JASP on measures of central tendency and taken the reading quiz. And I hope that you've taken the Stroop test online already. And if you haven't done so, stop, take that Stroop test, and then come on back. It'll help you to understand the data a lot more. And then once the Stroop test is complete, hopefully you've also completed the survey. The survey contains demographic questions that go along with the Stroop test, and all of those demographic items are on the data set. So let's take a look at the data set. First of all, you were asked to download this data set, so I'm going to open it up myself. And let's see what it looks like. All right, so we're going to look at the data and see what it contains. First of all, we have subject ID. Once again, that's a categorical variable. It's just person 1, person 2, etc. In this case, it starts with person 100, but there you go. It's just labeling what person all of the data to the right pertains to. In the next column, we have age. Participants reported their actual age. So this is a continuous variable. It's what we call a scale variable or a ratio variable. And then we have ethnicity was a question as well as gender, status in school. You've seen some of these variables before. All of these are nominal variables. They are categories. We have credits in school, so now we jump back to being a continuous variable or a ratio variable because you can't have negative credits, but there is an absolute zero. You could have 0 credits. So major in school is a categorical or nominal variable. If somebody is working full-time or part-time, that was asked, that's a nominal variable. What type of phone system you use. I'm an Android, by the way. Anybody else out there? And that is a nominal variable. Now what we're going to get to right here are questions 1 through 9 on that survey that you took. And these are wellness questions. And so it is true that each item is ranked on a scale of, I forget, was it 1 to 5 or 1 to 4? It looks like it might have been 1 to 4. And in that way, when we have a rating scale like that, that is sort of an ordinal rating. However, when we take all those ratings and we make a composite test score or survey score, then that becomes an equal interval or a ratio variable. It's a continuous variable at that point. So as such, when we put all of these numbers into JASP, we're going to consider them to be continuous variables. So we'll get to that again. All right, now this next part is condition. People in the experiment were assigned to 1 of 3 conditions. And you weren't assigned to any of these conditions, but in this experiment that we're looking at, people in condition 1 were just given the Stroop test. They're the control group. They didn't have anything weird happening to them, so they just went through the Stroop test. So people in condition 2 had some sort of an auditory distraction, some sort of noise that was maybe impacting their ability to complete the Stroop test. In condition 3, people had a visual distraction, so maybe lights were flashing or something was happening. So when we say that people were assigned to 1 of 3 conditions, this is a nominal variable because it's just group 1, group 2, group 3. There's no value to those numbers 1, 2, or 3. All right, so the next part, we have time 1, time 2, and time 3. If you will recall from your Stroop test, you only had 2 times. And in this test, the first time trial was just reading words that had no color to them. So think of the first thing where you're reading words that match the color as time 2, and time 3 was the condition where you were reading words that didn't match the color that they were in. And then we had 3 different error reportings for each of the times. You didn't have an error reporting, and don't worry about that. We're not going to do much with that. Okay, so we have our data. We know what it is that we're looking at. Now we need to download the lab instructions to see what it is we're supposed to do with all of this. So let's take a look at that. So I've already given you an overview of the Stroop test. I've given you the data description. You've already taken the online Stroop test. And now what we need to do is upload our Excel file to JAS. But let's take a look and see what else we're going to be doing while we're in the uploading process. We're going to save it as a new JAS file. We're going to compute a new variable called well-being by adding those variables I through 9. That's that composite scale that I just talked about. And then we're going to create value labels, which we haven't done before, but I'll show you how to do that for each of the conditions. So let's do this. I'm going to open up JAS first, and I'm going to go to my computer. So there it is. It says a CSV file, so I'm going to open that up. And here it is. Now the very first thing we always have to do is double check and make sure our data match the type of variable that JAS thinks it is. So subject ID, JAS thinks that this is a continuous variable. It's not. It's a nominal because it's just a matter of labeling person 1, person 2, etc. Age is indeed a scale variable. We call it scale, we call it continuous, and technically it's a ratio variable. Ethnicity, gender are both nominal, so we're in good shape here. Now, status is actually an ordinal variable because you're a freshman before you're a sophomore, before you're a junior and senior. However, because this was a text variable on our Excel file, it's not going to let us make it an ordinal variable, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter. We can consider it nominal for this case as well. Credits is a continuous scale variable. It's a ratio variable. Major is nominal. Working part-time or full-time is nominal. Phone system, Apple or Android, I'm Android, is nominal. And then all of these, this is where we need to really take a step back and do something different. All of these rating scales, I did mention that we're going to be turning them into a composite scale. So to do that, we need to have everything as a scale variable. So go through and make sure that all of your rating scales are as a scale variable. This is super important because we cannot make a composite scale unless these are scales. So I have I1 through I9, all those well-being items. So we're going to come back to that. Condition is going to be, it's seeing it as ordinal, but we're going to say it's nominal. And then time is continuous, time perfect. And then the error, again, this is going to be a scale, but you don't need to really worry about this. We're not going to work with this. Okay? So now we're going to go back and create that well-being variable that we talked about. So I'm going to hit the plus sign, and it says create a computed column. And I'm going to say yes, it's called well-being. And I'm going to click on the well-being. Nope. And I'm going to click on the hand, and I'm going to make sure it says scale, and then I'm going to compute the column. And it's saying, well, which ones do you want to add up? So I'm going to come over to the left-hand side and scroll down. Remember, if these are not listed as scale variables with a ruler, I can't do anything with them. So make sure that you have scales here. And I just hit compute column, and it says computed columns code applied. So let's check it out and make sure. So let's add the scale scores for the first person. 4 plus 1 is 5, 9, 12, 14, 17, 18, 20, 24. So let's make sure that we have a 24 here. And yes, the well-being scale is 24. So we're all good. Now, if you will recall, the next thing the directions said to do was to give value labels to each of the conditions. Remember, the conditions were either control, audio distraction, or visual distraction. So how I do a value label is I'm actually going to click on the word condition, and it pulls up this sort of screen. So for a value of 1, the direction said to call that control. For a value of 2, the direction said auditory. And for a value of 3, the direction said visual. All right, so I'm going to close that out. So now, as you can see, we have control, visual, and auditory all here. Work like a charm. All right, let's go back to our instructions to see what the next thing is that we need to do. So the first step says from the JAS analysis menu, we're going to do descriptive statistics, we're going to do frequency tables, and we're going to move all the nominal variables to the variable box. We're going to uncheck all the statistics items, and then we're going to have some frequency tables. So let's do that. So I'm going to come back over, I'm going to go to descriptives, and I'm going to move over everything except for subject ID because we don't care about it. It's not anything we're ever going to do anything with. So I'm going to move ethnicity over, gender, status, major, working, and phone, and condition. These are all the different possible tables we can have, but we need to do a couple different things. We're not done. We need to hit frequency tables, and I need to go to statistics and get rid of the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum, the maximum. Why is that? That is because we're talking about nominal variables. You can't do any of these statistics on nominal variables. So I'm going to close this and take a look. And now we have descriptive statistics. We can ignore this top part. We have the frequencies for ethnicity, the frequencies for gender, for status in school, for major, for working status, for type of phone, and for the condition. All right, so we're doing very well. Let's take a look and see what the next directions say to do. For part 2, we're going to go to descriptive statistics, but this time we're going to select all the scale or continuous variables except for those ranking scale items that we had in subject ID, and we're going to move it to the variables box. So let's do that. Now remember, when I'm starting a new analysis, I don't want to start moving things back over. I want to just go right back to descriptives and start fresh. That way it preserves everything that I've already done here. So move all the scale variables over. So anything with a ruler, basically, or your scale variables, except for we're not going to do any of these because we don't care about them anymore because we now have this well-being scale. So I'm going to hit time, I'm going to hit shift, I'm going to hold down and move them all over at once. Boom. All right, now we have some really good descriptive statistics, and what we're studying this week is the mean. So you can see the means of all of these different variables. And they're all in one place, so that's kind of good. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. If I look at time 1, time 2, and time 3, which time did people do the best at? So which row are you going to look at here to figure out who did the best on average? So on average means the mean. So when we're looking at who did the best, we're going to look at on average. And on average, it looks like people did best at time 1 when they were just reading the words that were not in any particular colors. So as we look at minimum and maximum, that gives us some information, but it doesn't tell us anything about who did best. When we're talking about who did best on average, we're going to be looking at the mean. All right, let's go to our instructions and see what's next. Part 3. The next 4 analysis will compare mean, range, and standard deviation. We're going to learn about standard deviation next week. You'll need these values to complete the assignment for this lab activity, which you will. So we're going to split the time variables by gender. What does that mean? Well, we're going to go to descriptive statistics, we're going to move gender to the split box, and we're going to move the 3 different time variables to the variable box. And we're going to take a look at that table. Let's do that right now. So I'm starting a new one, descriptives, and it said to move gender to the split box. I'm going to move that. And the time variables, time 1, time 2, time 3, to that box. Okay. So now I have some descriptive statistics here that split out how females and males did at time 1, how females and males did at time 2, and how females and males did at time 3. I'm going to ask you a question. At time 3, who did better on the Stroop test on average, males or females? Well, males took less time, 14.106 seconds. So that's how you answer that question. Who did better on average? All right. So let's go back and see what's next on our directions. So this time we're going to split well-being by gender. So we're going to do everything we did up here, but instead of the time variables, we're going to split the well-being variable. So I'm going to start a new one. I'm going to go to well-being is the variable I'm interested in. I'm interested in looking at the difference by gender. So I'm going to take gender and put it in the split box. Now remember, split box is how we're splitting out the groups. So think of this as being a nominal thing. You need to have a nominal variable here. So as we look at this descriptive statistics, the well-being of males and females. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Who did better on average on well-being? Or not who did better, who scored higher on average? Well, that would be the females in this case at 26.250. We're looking at the mean to figure out on average what the scores are. All right, let's go back to our directions. From the JASP analysis menu, we're going to go to descriptive statistics. We're going to move condition to the split box. We're dividing by condition, and then we're going to move the time variables to the variable box. All right, we're going to do that. So starting a new one, I'm going to move condition to the split box. That's what I'm going to split them by. And then the time variables, time 1, time 2, time 3, into the variables box. And now I know that how each of the three different conditions did on time 1, time 2, and time 3. So think about that. At time 1, which group did the best on average? Well, that's interesting. The auditory group has the lowest mean in this case. But take a look at the other ones to see what happens at time 2 and time 3. All right. Back to our directions. The last thing we're going to do is split the well-being variable by status, year in college. Okay, so I can do that. Start a new descriptive, and I'm going to split the well-being variable by status. So well-being is the variable at the top, and status is what I'm splitting it by. I want to see how freshmen are compared to sophomores, compared to juniors and seniors. So I'm going to move that to the split box. And as I look over here, I can very easily see from freshmen, seniors, juniors, sophomores, they're out of order, aren't they? They're in alphabetical order. Who did the best in terms of, or not who did the best, who scored the highest on their well-being? Who feels the most sort of well? And you can take a look at the means and figure that out for yourself. All right, let's go back to the instructions. Yay, we're already at the 4 credits. So since this is the last thing that you had to do, let's go ahead and go back, and we're going to save this as JASP output. I'm only asking you to do this just to save it so you have it. This saves everything. This saves the data and everything that we've done. But for what you need to turn in, remember to come up to the results section, hit copy, and then make a Word document and paste it in. There you go. Save it, submit it, save it as a PDF if you're working with Pages files, because I cannot read Pages files. They won't be accepted. So I was talking with a student last week, and we discovered a different way to submit your output. If you are having trouble pasting into a Word document, we had this weird thing that was happening. So you can come over here to export your results to your computer. And I'm going to put them in Lab 3 here. And it saves it as a HTML file. which I didn't think you could turn in, but actually you can. It works with Canvas. So you can submit that HTML file as your attachment if you need to. All right. And then after you submit your output, you have worksheets part 1 and part 2. What you're going to be asked to do on these worksheets is to interpret the means on this output and some other things as well. So you're going to be using this output as you're answering the questions in the worksheet. So make sure that you have downloaded these results and have them at the ready while you're completing the worksheets. Good luck, and please let me know if you have questions. Come to the Hallway Conversations Forum.